It wasn't the end of my marriage that changed everything. It was what my husband did the moment I said I needed space. A missing envelope, a quiet office, and a man I wasn't supposed to feel anything for. By the time I realized what I had started, there was no way to go back. You can't imagine what happened after that. Welcome to Vows and Betrayals, where we share quiet heartbreaks, impossible choices, and the strength it takes to start again. If you have ever felt like a stranger in your own relationship, or if life ever pulled you in a direction your heart was not ready for, leave a single word in the comments. Just one. Your story matters here. To those of you who have been following the stories on this channel, thank you. Your support is what keeps these voices alive. And if this is your first time with us, we are so glad you found your way here. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the part of you that still believes in second chances. Now let us begin. The room was beige, bland, silent, and almost too clean. It reminded me of a waiting room at a hospital, only colder. I sat at one end of the long rectangular table, gripping a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. It had no taste, like most things lately. Across from me sat Jonathan, my husband. Well, almost not my husband. 12 years of marriage boiled down to a man in a pressed shirt who barely looked at me anymore. He was scrolling through his phone, his face lit, not by emotion, but by a glowing screen. No wedding ring, no tension, just absence. Then the door opened, and everything shifted. The man who walked in wasn't loud or hurried. He wasn't even trying to make an entrance. But something about him cut through the room, like a breeze after weeks of stale air. He carried a slim leather folder, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. Tall, calm, present. Jonathan didn't even glance up. "Claire, this is Marcus Elamine, my attorney." I stood. I didn't feel ready to stand, but my body moved anyway. We shook hands. His grip was warm, professional, steady. "Nice to meet you," I said, because that's what you say in moments like this. But inside, I was already somewhere else, already hoping this would all be over soon. Marcus gave me a nod, took a seat beside Jonathan, and opened the folder with practiced ease. He began outlining assets, the savings, the house, the cat. Yes, the cat. We were still arguing about the cat. I tried to focus on the words, but something else caught me. Marcus wasn't just reading documents. He was watching. Not like a man with questions, and not like a man with opinions, but like someone who noticed things. Like how I tapped my fingers against the cup whenever Jonathan talked, or how my shoulders tensed at certain words: custody, liquidation, equity. He noticed what Jonathan hadn't seen in years. I wasn't sure why that struck me so hard, but it did. And without meaning to, without even realizing it, that was the moment everything quietly began to change. I didn't place him right away. Marcus, I mean. There was something about the way he carried himself. Calm, intentional, but not forced. His eyes were quiet, watchful, without being sharp. It was unsettling in a strange, familiar way. That night, after our first meeting, I couldn't sleep. Not from stress over the divorce. That part felt numb. It was something else, a kind of stirring, like a part of me had been tapped on the shoulder after years of silence. And then I remembered. 6 months ago, I had gone to a small gallery downtown. It was just me that day. Jonathan had passed on, going again. He always said the art scene in Charleston was too messy for his taste. I remember walking slowly through the space, taking my time with each piece. I had lingered in front of a painting for maybe 10 minutes. A woman alone at a window. Her back turned. You couldn't see her face, but you could feel the ache in her shoulders. I stood there for a long while, not moving. Not because the painting was perfect, but because it was honest. And then I'd felt it someone next to me. Not close, just present, quiet. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at the same painting. After a while, he said, "It's hard to paint loneliness without making it look staged." I turned slightly startled. He was tall, with skin the color of polished mahogany dressed in a dark coat. His beard was trimmed, neat. His eyes deep, like he carried stories he hadn't told anyone yet. I smiled and said something like, "This one feels real." He had nodded, then a pause. "It's in the shoulders," he said. "That weight you don't realize you carry until it's gone." I hadn't known what to say to that. We didn't introduce ourselves. Just stood there. Two strangers staring at the same sadness. Now sitting in that legal office across from him, it all clicked. That was Marcus, and I suddenly wasn't sure if this was all coincidence or something I wasn't ready to understand just yet. It started with a name, not mine, his. After that second visit to Marcus's office, something about him stayed with me longer than I cared to admit. I wasn't just thinking about his voice or the way he watched me with quiet attention. It was something else, like I had been seen, and not just recently. One afternoon, out of nothing but restless curiosity, I searched his name online, Marcus El Amin. I expected a generic lawyer's bioeducation firms, maybe a LinkedIn page. But what I found surprised me. Before working in private practice, Marcus had spent 4 years at a nonprofit legal aid center, one that specialized in low-income family mediation. And for a time, they handled couples counseling referrals too. That made me pause. 3 years ago, after one of our worst arguments, I had filled out an intake form for free mediation services. I never followed through, never went back. But I did fill it out with every painful detail. I even wrote a short note in the additional comments section. He doesn't see me anymore. I think I disappeared, and neither of us noticed. I sat there staring at my screen, heart racing. What were the odds he might have seen that file? Might have read my words. He probably didn't remember. Or maybe he did. Maybe that's why he looked at me that way in the office in the silence, like I wasn't a stranger. Like I had already told him everything once when I didn't think anyone was listening. And maybe he had been listening all along. Jonathan had forgotten or pretended to forget another document. I volunteered to drop it off, told myself it was just easier that way. When I arrived at Marcus's office, the receptionist had already left. The lights were dim. The building felt hushed, like the end of a long day. He opened the door himself. "You're late," he teased gently. But I made tea. We sat across from each other, not at his desk, but on the couch near the window. The blinds were half drawn. A soft jazz record played in the background, warm and slow. It filled the silence without pressing on it. I don't remember how the conversation shifted. 1 minute, we were talking about the missing signature, and the next, I was telling him how it felt to sleep next to someone who hadn't touched me in over a year, how I'd started narrating my life in my head because no one else was listening. Marcus didn't offer advice. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, with his whole presence. When I got home that night, I stood in front of a blank canvas. I hadn't touched one in almost 5 years, and I painted. Not to impress, not to prove anything, just to release something. When I finished, I wrote 2 words at the bottom corner: the quiet edge. I wasn't looking for anything. I had stopped by the house one afternoon to pick up a box of winter clothes I had left behind. Jonathan wasn't home. I still had my key. The air inside felt hollow, like a museum after hours. I moved quietly, almost like I was trespassing in my own past. The box was in the hallway closet, but when I pulled it down, a folder fell with it, thin, marked only with a medical lab logo. I wouldn't have opened it, but the flap had already come loose. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pathology report from 6 weeks ago. I sat down on the edge of the bed we used to share and read every line twice. Stage 2, pancreatic cancer. High probability of recurrence. Surgery recommended. Prognosis uncertain. The rest blurred. He knew. He knew before the divorce talk even started. Before he called the lawyer. Before he said he just wanted to be fair to both of us. I thought he wanted out. But the truth was worse. He wanted me free. And I hated him for that, almost more than if he'd simply fallen out of love. Because now I couldn't even be angry. I just sat there holding the paper, staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror. And I asked myself the one question I hadn't let in until now. What if he wasn't the selfish one? If you've ever felt torn between what's right and what your heart is quietly begging for, leave a single word in the comments. Just one. We'll understand. I hadn't expected to see her. It was a community fundraiser, silent auction, cheap wine, soft lighting. I went alone. I needed the distraction. I was browsing a table of donated paintings when I heard my name. Claire. I turned. It took me a second to place her. She'd cut her hair shorter, dyed it darker. But the smile was the same. Her name was Lauren. We'd met once years ago through an old art teachers group. We'd shared wine and stories, and nothing too serious. But tonight, she reached out and hugged me like she knew more than she should. We sat with plastic cups of white wine at a small cocktail table in the corner. Eventually, she asked how I was holding up. I said fine, and she smiled like she'd heard that lie before. Then she said it. You know Marcus still paints. I froze. He never mentioned that. She tilted her head. No. That's surprising. He stopped for years. Only picked it back up recently. Said someone reminded him why it used to matter. My chest tightened. I didn't ask more. Didn't need to. Later that week, Marcus and I met again to go over the last documents. His sleeves were rolled again. The room was too quiet. I don't know who leaned in first, but for one brief second, I let my hand rest on his. And he didn't move away. I had asked him finally. After that moment in the office when our hands didn't part, I told myself it was time for honesty. We met again, this time at a quiet coffee shop off King Street. Not law-related, not accidental. I told him I needed clarity about what he asked. You, I said, and Jonathan, and whether this is something real or just something temporary. Marcus looked down at his coffee, then back at me. He came to see me, he said. I blinked. Jonathan Marcus nodded. Before any of this, before he filed, before he even told you anything. He paused, choosing his words carefully. He said, he wasn't sure how long he had, but he didn't want to watch you fade with him. He said he'd already taken too much from you. My chest tightened. And then he said, if someone out there could remind you who you used to be, maybe that would be enough. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Marcus's voice softened. He never asked me to do anything. He just let me know, as if passing a torch. The room around me blurred. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't longing. It was something worse. He had loved me, and I had never even noticed that he was letting go. I had asked him finally. After that moment in the office, when our hands didn't part, I told myself it was time for honesty. We met again. This time at a quiet coffee shop off King Street. Not law-related, not accidental. I told him I needed clarity about what he asked. You, I said, and Jonathan, and whether this is something real or just something temporary. Marcus looked down at his coffee, then back at me. He came to see me, he said. I blinked. Jonathan Marcus nodded. Before any of this. Before he filed, before he even told you anything. He paused, choosing his words carefully. He said he wasn't sure how long he had, but he didn't want to watch you fade with him. He said he'd already taken too much from you. My chest tightened. And then he said, if someone out there could remind you who you used to be, maybe that would be enough. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Marcus's voice softened. He never asked me to do anything. He just let me know. As if passing a torch. The room around me blurred. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't longing. It was something worse. He had loved me, and I had never even noticed that he was letting go. I went to see him. No documents. No appointments. Just him. He opened the door before I even knocked, like he knew I was coming. Neither of us said much. I stepped inside. He closed the door behind me. The air felt heavier than usual. Or maybe it was just me. We sat down too close for casual, not close enough for anything else. He looked at me with that stillness again. The same one from the gallery. The same one from the couch. You don't owe me anything, he said. I know. I'm not asking for anything. I know. I reached for my mug, missed it, and touched his hand instead. He didn't move. I left it there for just a second longer than I should have, and then I said it quietly, because I didn't trust my own voice. I don't want to be rescued. I'm not here to save you, he said. Just to remind you. I nodded. His forehead leaned toward mine just slightly. My breath caught, but I didn't move. Neither did he. And in that almost kiss, in that not yet place, something deeper happened. Not passion, not escape, but restraint. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after that. I needed space, not from him, but from everything. From being someone's wife. From being someone's almost something. From making decisions before I remembered what it felt like to breathe. So I painted. Every morning after coffee, I stood in front of the easel and let silence take shape and color. I didn't try to make sense of what I felt, I just let it move through me. I painted 6 pieces in 3 weeks. The 7th came slower. I didn't know what it was about at first. I only knew it had to be quiet and brave and true. When it was done, I signed my name in the corner, and below it, a title, The Woman I Forgot to Be. At the opening of the local gallery exhibit, I didn't expect much, but someone bought the painting before the night was over. I stood in the back, watching the empty space where it had hung. That's when I felt a presence behind me. You remembered her, Marcus said. I turned. He wasn't smiling, just watching. Still. I nodded. I think I'm still remembering. He didn't step forward. He didn't ask for anything. He just said, I'll wait. And this time, I believed him. There are moments in life when you don't need fireworks or declarations. You just need someone to hold still while you remember how to stand up again. This wasn't a story about betrayal. Not really. It was about forgetting and what it means to come back home, not to someone else, but to yourself. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin with someone new. It begins with the first breath you take without apologizing for it. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible, ever lost your own voice in the noise of someone else's life, I hope this story reminded you you're still in there, still worthy, still whole. Even now. And maybe you're not too late to remember yourself either. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment below just one moment when you forgot who you were. And if you're new to Vows and Betrayals, hit subscribe for more stories like this quiet, honest, and just enough to stir a tired soul.